What's up, Coach Kevin? You ready to rumble?
Yeah.
Yeah?
What does rumbling mean?
Rumbling? Rumbling means fighting, scrapping. We're not really gonna fight or scrap. Maybe in a metaphorical sense. Let's see, is everybody, let me go back on to see if everybody, if anybody, is anybody out there? Y'all gonna fight? That's what we don't grapple, we scrapple. This is now gonna be, I'm gonna change it. I think, you know how you say we shouldn't even call it Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, or at least I don't know if you think we should call it that, but I've heard people say.
It should be Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
It should just be Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah.
But I disagree.
Why?
Because we don't do Jiu-Jitsu anymore.
We don't.
The best people don't do Jiu-Jitsu anymore.
What is that?
The stuff that, I mean, it's like Jiu-Jitsu, it's from Jiu-Jitsu, it's from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but it's not Jiu-Jitsu anymore.
What does that mean?
It means that Jiu-Jitsu has become something different
So it's not
than what it was 20 years ago, 15 years ago.
So like
And I prefer the term scrappling.
scrap.
So I'm going to change the name. It's no longer going to be Samurai Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I'm just going to change it. I got to get new mats anyway. I'm going to get some new mats, and it's going to just get, maybe I'll just put some tape over that, and it's just going to say Scrappling Academy. What do you think?
That sounds amazing. We should totally do
What do you do here? What is it? And I'm going to call it.
We scrap.
You know what I'm going to call it? I'm going to call it American Scrappling.
American.
Because it kind of sounds like Scrapple, which I love. I mean, Scrapple to me is.
I do like unnecessary patriotism in the martial arts community.
And we should be like Rex Kwon Do, where we like wear
American flag.
Let me tell you the very first thing.
We only have
This is
female
fun.
colors,
This
red,
is a
white,
funny
blue.
story. When I first heard, well, right after I first heard about Jiu-Jitsu, I was doing Taekwondo, and I saw UFC, you know, the whole thing. But I was doing Taekwondo at that point, and I remember I went to a seminar for Taekwondo. And the guy's name was Joe Lewis, who I think he is a legit.
Joe Lewis.
Do you know who Joe Lewis is?
I've
Not the
heard-
boxer.
Oh.
Is it John? Maybe it's John Lewis. But anyway, whatever. He showed up. Two things. The first thing is this guy was like, he was a legit, right, professional karate guy.
Yeah.
Right? And he was like, maybe not as famous as Bill Superfoot Wallace or
Did he set
Benny the
his
Jet, or certainly not
Did
Bruce
he
Lee.
set his nunchucks on fire?
That would have been awesome, and I probably would still be doing whatever he did. But he actually showed me, or showed us, like my very first grappling technique. And this was the whole point. He was wearing the full karate gi, made out of like American flag, like whatever, red, white, and blue flag gi. So that left an indelible impression on my mind.
Yeah.
Do you want to see the very first technique, jiu-jitsu technique that I never learned?
Yes.
Stand up.
Okay.
Don't really punch him.
Okay.
But his whole thing, not this whole thing. Go, turn the other way. Turn the other way. No, not that way. No, change your stance. Change your stance. So what he was saying is when somebody goes to hit you, you're going to slip and then come in here.
I totally did this when I did martial arts as a kid. Yeah,
Do you remember that?
Yeah, it's like the sleeper hold, you know, like
It was like a reverse sleeper,
Yeah.
right? Because you're not behind a person, but you're here. You got to switch it because you're here, and it was like you're gonna slip it. Remember, slip, or you could duck, right? You could go duck. That was even better because then you'd come up, and it doesn't work as well on a taller person. But if you did it to me, I'd be totally over because you're so much taller, right? If I come here, and then I'm cooked. It's harder for when you're a shorter person. I have to kind of jump up there. That was the first jiu-jitsu technique I ever learned.
Yeah.
Right there from, I think his name was Joe Lewis, in a full red, white, and blue karate gi.
I like that.
He was a super cool dude. It was actually, I don't remember anything else from the seminar because, of course, why would I? But I remember my recollection of him was that he was like funny and cool. And I was kind of like amused by, not amused as in he's a clown, but like amused because he was funny.
Yeah.
Right? But he was, I mean, if you go back and you, like the old, like he was like on the cover of Black Belt magazine once, you know, like he's that type,
Yeah.
maybe not the most famous karate, he wasn't Chuck Norris, but
Yeah.
he was like on the circuit, he was well known, he was pretty good.
Where was he from?
I don't know.
Oakland guy?
But he, you know, like the funny thing is about that guy is that he didn't pretend to be like a jiu-jitsu guy or anything. And he was in his like little, in his way, let's see if I can find him. In his way, he was just very honest. And so here's the guy. I wish I could find him in his full American gi. He's here. He's from Knightdale, North Carolina. And he's been in movies. He was in a movie called Death Fighter, Force 5, Jaguar Lives, Kill 'Em All,
Force 5,
Death Cage, The Wrecking Crew, and Blood Moon. There's actually more. Trained by Ed Parker, who I think was American Kempo, and he was like a Bruce Lee guy. He actually did train with Bruce Lee. I gotta find some more pictures of him. Hold on. Images. Man, I wish. He was in this gi right here. Look at this. You can't really see it very well. Come here, look. Get off your ass. Look, this is actually the gi he was wearing.
Yeah.
Like that. Here, I don't know if you guys can see this. Let me try to get this up if we can do this. It's not going to focus.
Blurry.
Let's see. Oh, there it is. I don't know if you guys could see that. He actually, this is like I guess some sort of like image that is from a movie or something. But that actually, or no, it was a composite.
Well, that looks like it was taken at a mall.
Man, I'm trying to find it in all his glory.
When 9/11 happened, I was doing karate.
Oh, he was on American Karate Magazine.
Yeah.
Oh man. He's in the Professional Karate Hall of Fame. Man, where is he in this great gi? It's not him.
Is it?
He was in something called Kickboxer Assassino? I don't know. But yeah, there he is with Chuck Norris. I mean, he was a legit karate guy, and he was like in some movies, I guess. I'm not sure how good the movies were, but whatever. That can't be the qualification. There were a lot of bad movies with good people in them.
Anyway, I remember like post 9/11, a lot of martial arts school took a really pro-America turn.
Yeah.
Because it's like.
Well, why wouldn't they always be pro-America?
Well, there was this idea that maybe a karate school would be pro-Japanese, which is kind of weird, but.
Why not?
At least
Why wouldn't it be pro-Japanese?
My school made us say USA whenever we came onto the mat, and I really enjoyed it.
No, they did not. Oh my God, they make you pledge the allegiance. Do people still do the Pledge of Allegiance? Did you do Pledge of Allegiance?
Yeah. Didn't you?
Yeah, every damn day from kindergarten all the way through high school.
We had actually, for karate, we had a student creed that we had to recite every.
Oh, what's the creed? Do you remember the creed?
I am, but I'm not going to recite it. I do remember it though. Oh, too much. Oh, too little. Oh, that's good.
Anyway, well, I don't know why I was talking about that. Oh, because you were talking about the American ease,
Oh,
the gratuitous patriotism.
Do you want to start an American Jiu-Jitsu academy under Keenan Cornelius? Can we join Legion?
I mean, maybe. I don't know. Why would we? Has he produced a single great athlete other than himself? Like, what is the benefit that I derive from being part of his?
We get to say that we do American Jiu-Jitsu.
I can do that anyway. You can't trademark American Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah, but it's not real.
And I don't want to even do it. I don't want to do American Jiu-Jitsu. I want to do American Jiu-Jitsu.
No.
Call it just American Jiu-Jitsu.
American Jiu-Jitsu.
That actually sounds awesome. American Jiu-Jitsu.
Just get a gun.
Huh?
Just get a gun.
Just get a gun.
Just get a
That
gun.
could be our slogan. Just get a gun.
American Jiu-Jitsu, we're just a shop where you can buy firearms and practice shooting. I would really enjoy that.
Not in Santa Clara County here in California, you can't. Oh my God. So I was thinking about something today. Speaking of shooting, you brought it up, not me.
Uh-huh.
So I'm getting into this reloading thing, right? And what attracts me to reloading is a couple things.
Cost savings?
Let me tell you. What?
Cost savings?
No, it doesn't save it. It doesn't save any money.
Really?
Not really. I mean, it depends on how you do it and if you can mass produce it.
Are you not reusing your shells?
Yeah, oh yeah, you can reuse your shells, but like, so look, here's the point that I'm coming to. The real attraction to me is that I'm not anti, gun control in any way. I think there's a lot of good things in gun control, but what I hate is, like, right now we have an ammo shortage, and it's really hard to get ammunition. And a lot of people won't, even if you can find it, they won't ship it here to California. And even if they do ship it here, you have to ship it to a third party, an FFL, have them accept it, and then you have to go fill out the paperwork to buy it. So it's like this whole kind of runaround. Me, I just want to like make some stuff I can go and shoot and not have to worry about all this other stuff, right? So anyway, that's why I kind of was attracted to it, because I couldn't get a box of ammo for anything less than like, I mean, you can go online to some of these auction websites and pay like $80 for a box of 20 cartridges, which is
Too much.
stupid. It's like $4 a shot, It's like, I might as well just like, it's like the guys who have to like, you ever see the videos where they're burning money to like warm themselves?
Yeah.
Like, I might as well just be throwing $20 bills out my window, on my way here, because it's essentially, that's how much money you're wasting by shooting this. And you can't even get it. It's hard to even get it.
At that cost?
At any cost.
Lame.
And anyway, so I started getting into this, and then it kind of piqued my kind of the nerd in me about me. I try to I like to understand things, how they operate, and I started getting into this whole like actually becoming more accurate through handling. Like the best shooters in the world, what they do is they call it hand load, where they every part of the cartridge, from the coating they put on the bullet to, how they ream the primer pocket, right? And, how far they seat the bullet in the case are all things that are measured and, calibrated and tested so that it gets as accurate as possible. Right, so you manufacture. You essentially you're not reloading, although you do reload. You're essentially manufacturing your own ammo, and you kind of customize it to your rifle, right? So it's a total rabbit hole. It's a total rabbit hole. You go down in it and you find out there's all this stuff that these people are doing to customize their ammunition to their gun, to fit their ammo to their gun and to their application, to their use. Because there's different types of shooting, right? You have people that are hunters, and you don't need to get down to like, millimeters of accuracy. When you're hunting something at 200 yards or 300 yards maybe, you don't really need to be that accurate beyond like that kill zone, right? Where you have to hit it, like that's an ethical kill. I'm not a hunter, right? But if you just need to hit a relatively large animal at 200 yards, you don't really need to reload or hand load, because you don't 1 millimeter here, a couple, an inch there, 2 inches there is not going to make that much of a difference as long as you're kind of aiming for center mass and you can hit it. You're decent at aiming your rifle, right? Now that's a whole other thing. So anyway, I go down this rabbit hole. There are all these things that so what do I do? I go online and I start researching like what the top pros do, right? How do they hand load? Because I want to know what the kind of the return on my investment is going to be. Because each time you kind of like do another process in your hand load, you're adding time, you're adding money, right? You're adding another step that you can screw up. Okay, so these guys anneal their case, right, which is essentially they're making they're conditioning their cases so that they fit the firearm better. I don't know how to. That's not a technical explanation, but essentially you're going to get this annealer and engage in this whole process. And these annealers range in price from like $250 to $1,500 for benchtop annealers. And sometimes they have like little blow torches.
Is it just a
propane torches?
like shave the bullet down, or is it?
No, what it does is, it extends the case life, right? So that's one thing it does. Because every time, so if you just reload a regular case, your average case, you might get 8 or 10.
Yeah.
When you anneal it, maybe every couple times that you shoot it, or every time, some people anneal every time after they shoot it,
Yeah.
you're essentially, from what I understand, you're prolonging, at the very least, you're prolonging the life of the case, so you can keep reloading.
What does the word anneal mean?
It's some sort of electrochemical, depends on how you're doing annealing. There's just straight blowtorch annealing, right, where you're annealing the top of the case usually.
You keep saying the word annealing.
Okay, so you basically you're heating the top of the case. Okay, so you make it a little bit more, because what happens is when you shoot the case, there's pressures that are involved, and it's going to like open up the case. You need to every time you have to reload, you resize the die, or you resize the case with a die.
Is that the annealing that you're talking
No,
about?
that's not annealing. That's just resizing, right? The annealing part of it is actually going in and kind of like reconditioning with heat.
Okay.
That, and it doesn't necessarily have to be heat though, because there's electrode, right? And there's also I think there's a chemical process.
But I've heard that word used in forging, I believe.
Yeah, it's a metallurgical process that you use for jewelry. You use it for a lot of different things. I don't know anything about it other than the fact that there are a bunch of machines out there, and the purpose of it is twofold. Sometimes you can get it to prolong your case life, so it doesn't become too brittle over time and break, or become so deformed, that you're going to hurt your accuracy. And B, if you do it the right way, or a certain way, it'll also increase your accuracy a certain point, a certain level. And then you have things like bullet seating, where you can take the bullets and you can adjust how far down or up the bullet sits from the edge of the case.
Seating, like deep seating?
Like seating the bullet into the case.
Okay.
Right? And so depending on the length of your chamber, you can get the bullet closer to where what they call is the lands, which are basically where the rifling starts in your rifle. So anyway, I'm going down this giant, I'm already in a rabbit hole with this. I'm going to bring it back to jiu-jitsu. Don't worry, I'm getting there. Stay with me. Anyway, I'm reading all this stuff, and I want to know, what is the upside, right? Like, what kind of accuracy gains will you achieve by going through all this expense of time and effort? Okay, and just learning, right? And it's another part of the process that you can screw up. So I'm going through and reading, I'm trying to get statistics, like how good is this for me, right? How good, what will I see? What are the results going to be from all this if I do it?
Why? You're going to do it anyway.
No, I'm not. So here's why. I'm looking at it, and I'm reading, and there's a lot of people talking, yeah, it's good, no, it doesn't work, yeah, whatever. And I'm like, how can some people, pros, and I look at this great website called, I forget what it's called, I'm not going to plug them. But anyway, it's like what the pros use, what the pros do. Yeah. Right? Great website. And I'm reading it, and they're like, here are the 4 things that the pros do. These are the top guys and women, I guess. Annealing, right? And then seating, like what they call neck turning, which is a way of like adjusting your neck tension, which is and seating of the bullet, right? So these are whatever. So I'm like, okay, the pros are doing this. I should do it, right? Like if the pros do it, I should do it.
Wait. Why is that the logic there?
Well, here you go. This is a good question, right? It's good to question. Why is that logical, right? It's logical because if I want to get more accurate, if I want to get better results, I should imitate what the best people in the world do.
But are you getting bad results now?
I wouldn't call them bad results. It's not a question of whether they're bad. It's a question of how good do you want it to be? Do you want it to be perfect? Are you chasing perfection?
If you got different results, would you be able to tell the difference between the different results and the results you usually get?
Yes. Yes.
You right now? Or people?
People.
Okay.
Right. No. So you're right? Like, because this gets me to kind of where I'm going, which is you are not a pro. I am not a pro. And let's count the ways that I'm not a pro. But even assuming that I could shoot, like I had the actual physical skill to shoot like a professional shooter, what I learned was that, and this was in this article that I was reading, is that there's one big piece missing other than my lack of relative skill. right? Or the difference in my relative skill. And that the article points out, that I was reading, was that pro shooters are shooting custom rifles. They're custom-made rifles right after that. These are not rifles that you can go to the store like I did and purchase off the rack and say, thank you, I'll buy that for
So
you.
we're custom, or not custom, regular bullets made for regular guns typically?
Well, here's the thing, right? Like, so if I'm making a stock, whatever, stock firearm, there are manufacturing standards. And if I say I'm chambered in a particular caliber, then pretty much all those, I have to be able to accommodate the top, within a certain tolerance, all the manufacturers that create this caliber of cartridge. And all those manufacturers are gonna, so there's like a
This sounds like building a
wait.
PC.
like what?
This sounds like building a PC, where like you buy parts. that
Anything. You
can't
have
go
a
together.
mix and match.
Yeah.
I can go and I can just get all the components and slam them together,
Yeah. Hopefully.
more or less.
Some of them.
They may
Sometimes.
or may not be designed to work, other than roughly. They're not going to be that handmade, custom-made
Yeah.
thing.
For a design for your specific job, for whatever it is. that
My
you're
abilities, my job, my goals, whatever it is. It's the same thing, right? I mean, these guys are shooting rifles that are like $5,000 rifles, okay, which is expensive or more.
doing. Probably more.
That have been custom built, like not just like, hey, can you kind of do this for me or that? They're like, I'm a pro shooter. I want you, Kevin Gunsmith, to like create a weapon for, and they're very specific because there's different types of shooting, right? So there's shooting that is like Olympic shooting, position shooting. There's bench rest shooting where there's F-class shooting. There's where you sit, you have basically a gun vise or a very stable gun rest that keeps your gun from moving between shots, right? Then you have precision shooting where you gotta run around, you do different things, there's timing, you're going out to 1,000 yards or more. These are very different purposes, right? So, I guess the long and short of it is like going down and like getting into like the weeds of learning and investing in and like both monetarily and just time-wise will have no positive impact. And even if it did, I wouldn't be able to measure it. Because why? Because I don't have the same experience or purpose or equipment that the people that I'm idolizing in this case and are looking to for guidance,
Your whole reasoning behind exploring this activity, I think, is flawed, right? Like you're not a pro shooter.
No.
So like,
but I want to shoot like one,
you
Kevin.
want to shoot like one, sure, but like you don't. Like right now at this stage of your development, I don't shoot, but I would guess that it's not the point where you need to like finely tune
Yes,
your round.
you were correct.
However,
okay.
that's not what reloading your own rounds is for. It's not for like.
Well, it can be for many things.
For you, probably not. My dad used to reload his own rounds, and what I believe it was for was so that he could have private time away from his family. He really liked shooting, and he enjoyed it, and he was super into it, and he wanted to know everything about it, and this was part of it.
That was like a hobby. Just
Yeah.
good to know.
It's like, it's just...
Even if it doesn't have any like tangible benefit when you actually shoot.
You don't know how to do it yet, and you think you might be able to. And
Right.
you might learn something useful, you might not.
It's just like, it's fun. It's fun. It's a hobby.
Yeah, it's fun.
It's fun. But, so here's the thing, right? Like, I personally don't like spending a ton of money for something that makes no appreciable impact on what I'm actually doing.
We'll do it.
And in fact, will probably frustrate the living crap out of me when I'm trying to figure out how to do it, right?
But once you get it, it's going
Yeah, once I have it, then
you get that. You can get into that flow.
you know what the problem is? This is the rabbit hole. The rabbit hole is that I learn how to do all that stuff, and then I'm like, yeah, but this rifle that I have isn't ever going to, so I'm going to go buy the fancy rifle, right? Which again,
That's how hobbies all work, right? You start with
it's a money hole.
like a thing, and then
It's a money hole.
decide that you like it, and then you go and buy literally everything.
So here's where I'm going with it,
Uh-huh.
right? Here we go. There you go. There you go. Thank you, Cameron.
Is he saying what a kneeling is?
Yes. I'll read it out loud.
Hold on, can I guess?
Yes, go ahead.
Does it allow the crystallization of the metals to go slower so that it forms in a non-brittle way and it lasts longer?
Well, you're kind of.
Kind of?
To heat metal or glass and allow it to cool slowly in order to remove internal stresses and toughen it.
Yeah, recrystallization.
That's what I said. Yeah. That's exactly what I said, Cameron.
Perfect.
So here's where I'm going with this. Ultimately, bring this back to jiu-jitsu. Because it kind of reminded me, but I wanted to see what you think. If there's any similar phenomena that you've observed within the jiu-jitsu community, right? Or within training jiu-jitsu. This idea of investing in something that has little to no tangible return. Oh, you're gonna say something controversial. I love it. Do it.
No, it's like that. I can't think of. I'm just happy that anyone is training for whatever reason, right? Like if you spend your time looking up what I would consider to be useless things, like good for you. You're looking up stuff that is relevant and relevant to your interests, right? Like even though you don't have the maybe scope or the context to know that what you're looking at isn't going to be maybe the best for you in the long run, at least you're looking up stuff. Like, I'm totally for that.
Okay, there's a minimal,
like,
yes, you're interested in the sport. Any interest is a good interest.
If you think that buying the top of the line gi is going to make your jiu-jitsu
totally make you
better when it's your third day, great.
You'll look damn good.
You're supporting a jiu-jitsu company. Like, I'm for it. You're enthusiastic. Like, I don't know, if you want to look up YouTube videos of techniques and you want to come in and try and fail and try and fail and try and fail, and maybe every once in a while you catch it, like, great, you're coming in, you're trying, and you're failing, and that's part of the process.
Sure, okay. You're taking a very tolerant, kind of Catholic view of...
Well, we're in a very, like, a dry spell of training, so
it's what I encourage
people.
So here's what I was thinking. I think that's all true. I was actually thinking of something that John Danaher was talking about in a totally different context, but I think it's a similar, you can translate it in a way. He was talking about, if you remember, we talked about this before a couple of weeks ago, kind of the sunk cost bias. I don't know if the right word is, I'm not an economist, but, or fallacy. What?
It's a fallacy.
Maybe, or whatever it is, but it's, I'm not sure if it's a fallacy, but it's the idea of like, if I hit you up for $10,000, right? You invest, you give me that $10,000, and you think you're going to get $20,000 back or whatever,
yeah,
right? And then I come back to you a month later and I say, oh, Kevin, you know, I got $10,000 from you, but you know, we have some things that we need to, some unforeseeable expenses. I need another $500. You know, you're already into me for $10,000. You know, you give me that $500 extra, you're probably going to be inclined to give it to you, right? Because I asked for it. If you're going to, you know, and if I don't get it, then you're going to lose your entire investment, right? Yeah. So, and then that can continue on, right? I keep coming back to you for more and more, and each time you're like, well, now I'm even further in the hole.
Well, let's not go into slippery slope fallacies here.
Well, but you know what I mean? Like if you give me, if you give me 10,000 and then I come back for 100 or 500, you're probably going to give it to me.
Yeah.
If I keep doing that.
There's a sweet spot where it's like not too much where I'm like, go away. Not too little where it's like this isn't gonna.
But at some point you may, and if you go over, sometimes like you know like maybe for whatever reason you weren't thinking straight. You gave me 5K. Now you're down 15. You're in the whole 15. Right? Now you start chasing that return. You start saying, I've invested so heavily, I need to get the payout. So I'll pay you even more money.
Gambling addiction.
It's kind of like, I don't know if it's an addiction, but it's like this idea of, all right, I've already invested, you don't want to write that off. So you give even more money. It's like throwing good money after bad, right? Like is the old saying.
Yeah.
But you know, the way that John was talking about this was almost from a counter perspective, right? Like the person's investing so much in passing your guard and getting cross-side that they're not just going to give it up. Mm-hmm. They're going to hold on to it. They're going to really, and in so doing, in trying to like, you know, recapture or capture all that investment in time and effort and sweat and fatigue, they're liable to make mistakes, right? And you can use those mistakes as a way.
What if they don't make mistakes?
Everyone makes mistakes.
That's not true.
Well, I think yes.
Well, sorry, everyone does make mistakes. Not everyone makes mistakes that you're able to identify.
Or some people make mistakes they're able to recover from
Sure.
for various reasons. I don't know. I mean, yes, at the margins, right? A person, right? If you do, let's say you do the correct escape, right? This happens. I was thinking this with respect to like Elias and Laird. They won't hold on to a bad position. You don't hold on to bad positions. You will flow to the next thing, right? You don't, and so thereby you don't get, you're rarely attached to a given position, right? Whereas some people, they get cross-eyed, they get mounted, and they just want to stay there, even though things are like crumbling apart,
Yeah.
right? Because they just are attached to that, like I've worked so hard, and if I give it up now, right? So in that case, you will give up the position. Now you may go to another position, we'll redo that whole thing again to what our relative abilities are. But the general gist of what John is saying, I think, holds true more often than not, right? If a person's holding on to something, they feel like they've invested, you can punish them if they don't let go, right? But the flip side of that, which is what I'm trying to get at, is this idea of determining the return of investment as the initial person, right? How much should I invest in any of these things, right? Whether it's a jiu-jitsu move or not, right? It could be a training methodology. It could be lifting weights with kettlebells that you shouldn't be doing, and bending your back in ways that probably are not great for your back. Because I was thinking, like an example of that is, are people, like for example, right? If I want to pass the guard, okay, and my goal is to pass your guard and get chest to chest, right? Which is like Jiu-Jitsu 101, right? You're playing guard, I'm passing guard. My goal is to generally pass your guard, get past your legs, get you in cross-eyed. That's my goal. Your goal is to submit me, sweep me, right? Or just stop me, right? That's kind of, right?
Positional sparring now, or is it
Anything, right? Anything.
Okay.
If I'm general, like if you not now again, this is not, I know I'm generalizing here, right? So this is not 100% true all the time.
Okay.
But like when you go and you look at your typical jiu-jitsu tournament and you watch the matches, right? Somebody's gonna either try to take each other down, or if they don't, somebody sits the guard, and maybe sometimes they both try to sit the guard, right? But eventually, it'll generally shake out that like one person's playing guard and one person is. Now, you go to the Masters division and nobody wants to pull guard and they just kind of push each other around all the time for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's not a good example. But generally, I would say these matches follow a pattern, and especially at the higher levels where somebody just essentially sits, or they have a judo match to see who's going to get taken down, right? But somebody's playing guard. My job is generally to pass, and your job is to sweep, submit, or stall, right?
Okay.
Or I could be stalling on the top. Maybe I'm going to have an advantage with 30 seconds left, and I just want to stall you out, right? These are all things that we do.
Yes.
The question is, do I invest? Do I have to invest in passing your guard? Do you have to invest in sweeping me? Right?
No.
What do I mean by this? So let's just take an example. The Meows. They do not, I can't remember the last time I saw them actually pass someone's guard to chest. Almost never. Almost never. What do?
Bare ball.
Yeah, go to your back.
Yeah.
They just go to your back. Almost by definition, they can't, so they sit, right? So they don't even play this is not just them, but they don't even play the takedown game.
Yeah.
They'll sit, and then they just want to go to your back. They're not even trying to sweep you. They will if you let them, right? If they have an opportunity.
Yeah.
But they don't even really try to sweep people.
Yeah.
I mean, they can, but what do? They just barambolo or inside, invert inside, kiss to the dragon, and they just go to your back. You could be totally standing. You could be like this.
Yeah.
They're not trying to. And this is Hernandez brothers and any like high level. They just go around you and they get to your back. I'm not getting swept.
Yes.
Right? I'm not getting submitted yet.
Sometimes you get swept.
Sometimes, right? If I fight if I do something, I might get swept.
Yeah.
But they haven't invested the way that typically jiu-jitsu would think of it, right? Like they're not investing in the game that we all generally prepare to perform. It's a very interesting thing to me. You know, we talk about it in terms of meta, right? Like, oh, there's the meta, and now that is the kind of the dominant meta, right? Is this Berimbolo, but like, you know, the person, there's still, and then you have other people who, you know, they don't necessarily just try to pass. Like I was thinking of Gordon, and he will get you, if you let him, he'll get you chest to chest. And he's not alone in this, but more often than not, he's passing to get to your back or get to your legs, right? He's passing because he does a different rule set, right? It matters what your rule set is.
Yeah.
You know, in a submission only, you know, longer match or no time limit match, you know, you don't have to pass the guard the way that you would in a typical IBJJF tournament.
So
you know,
what about investment?
So I guess the idea is here, right? When let's say we're playing, I'm trying to pass your guard, right? I can make a decision beforehand, any roll or even during, of like, is it worth it? Like, should I be investing time and effort into passing the guard in this case, right? Or stalling, right? Like, what is that going to get me?
I have a rule for that.
What is your rule?
My rule is nobody can make me work harder than I want to work, right? Like, I don't have to do anything.
Well, but there's also risks, right? So every investment.
There's risk, and
yes.
I look at every unique situation and make that risk assessment every time.
Okay.
Like that's just for me. Like, I don't know. I don't really have like a tournament strategy.
Yeah, because you don't do tournaments.
Yeah.
You're not a tournament jiu-jitsu.
I look at the person
athlete.
and I know them or I don't know them, and I decide what I'm going to do from there.
Well, this brings me to the point, right? Like, so when I'm passing, or I'm in the top position, right? I'm looking at, okay, what is required of me to pass or stall?
No, like you don't have to.
No, I'm not. But so I'm looking at that, but then also you have to, perhaps in terms of like investing, we're using the language of investment. Like, what are the risks of that investment, right? So I don't necessarily have to work very hard.
Yeah.
But there's a risk involved in me not working very hard.
Yeah.
Which is, I'm not working very hard, but if I continue to like try to knee cut you, for example, and you happen to be really good at defending a knee cut, or not just defending, but actually countering or using a knee cut, right? That's like kind of working into like what you like to do. Even if I do that more or less correctly from a technical perspective, I'm still running a massive risk, right? It's kind of like every technique, and any particular technique of passing the guard carries with it some risks, like specific risks, right? If I'm doing an over-under pass, there's a specific risk for particular types of submissions and sweeps, right? Triangles, arm locks, omoplatas. If I'm doing more of a knee cut, I'm probably not going to get, it's going to be harder to triangulate, but you're going to be able to do more De La Hiva, reverse De La Hiva. You'll be able to do some more type of like modern guard type of stuff.
I guess.
Right? I mean, it's just, these are the things, right? Like every time I do this, you're going to do something else. There's a set.
There's nothing you can think of that you can do in a jiu-jitsu match that doesn't inherently have risk.
Correct.
Unless you're rolling with someone in a coma.
Correct. Right? So, but there are relative risks for everybody. Right?
Yeah,
there's risks that you're
you
comfortable
don't know
with.
them though, especially if you
Well, once you get a little more experience, you know.
No, if you don't know who you're rolling with. Like if you've never rolled with a person in a crossfit, especially in a tournament setting, and you don't know.
I'm saying risk with respect to a particular. I'll give you an example. Here's a better example, or an example maybe that illustrates what I'm saying. Okay, so let's say you're really good at whatever guard. Okay, just guard in general. And I know, or I suspect, that trying to pass your guard is a very risky proposition. Yeah.
In terms of what?
I'm going to get swept. I'm going to get submitted. You have a really good guard. I'm having either I've tried to pass it already, or I can't even get to the beginning. Right? It's just really hard.
So it's just a place where you won't have control.
I just don't feel comfortable.
Sure.
Right? I don't know. Maybe it's you. Maybe it's some person I don't roll with. But I'm trying to like get grips, trying to do something, I'm feeling like this is not going my way.
You're not in charge.
Yeah, right? I'm like, oh, this is not good.
Yeah.
Now, I can kind of back off a little bit,
Sure.
right? I can kind of not really push forward.
Depends.
And I'm not going to get swept anymore. It's going to be harder.
Okay.
It's going to be harder. I'm not going to get submitted. What is going to happen?
I don't know.
Right? Well, it depends on the rule set. Right? I might get called for stalling, right? For not engaging.
Okay.
Right? That person might get called for stalling. We might both get called for stalling.
Maybe.
Or that person might stand up.
Maybe.
They might. I mean, like if I take my weight off of you, like if I don't try to come forward, you come up. That's just, I know that. I know like if I take weight off, you're gonna come up. Right? Same thing from like close guard. If I don't like put my hands forward, right, and base on you and keep you down, you're gonna take me over. You're gonna do your best to do that. Right? So.
But you know that because you rolled through before.
Yeah, but I mean, you can get a sense right away, right? I mean, you can get a sense if I'm trying to pass it and then I take the weight off, and the person's either gonna pop up or they're not.
Yeah, but you don't know if that's a good idea or not.
Well, I mean, this gets you to the idea of, I mean, you don't ever really know until you roll with somebody a bunch of times. Maybe once, maybe they're so good you know right off the bat.
I think my point is that like all this talk of risk assessment, it sounds like you could think about it endlessly and you would never come to a satisfying conclusion, and by the time that you came to a conclusion it's too late.
Well, I mean, this is stuff that you should, in my mind, you're right? Like if I just sit there and try to run risk calculations, it's stupid, right? It's not, you don't even have time for that. If you're trying to do that, you're gonna be getting choked out.
Yeah.
Right? It's not about something that you're, like on the fly you can make some judgments. Obviously we all make decisions about what we feel good about and what we don't. And we have to deal with things that the other person's doing. Sometimes it's a decision we want to make, sometimes it's like a decision we have to make. And sometimes the person's so good or we messed up so badly that there's not really much of a decision. It's just a decision of whether we tap now or tap later.
Yeah.
Right? Or how much pain do we want to withstand, or how much do we want to grind it out. But from more of a strategic perspective, like beforehand, you could, like the Meows, like a Gary Tony, for example, like, people who play an unconventional game, they could decide, right, and some do, to play something that is very different than, and again, this is rules-based, right? Like if I'm at Abu Dhabi, and I don't have to worry in the first half of the match that I'm gonna get scored on if I get swept, then I'll be doing this, right? Maybe.
Yeah.
Right? If it's a no time limit, no points, fight to win, where attempts. So here's an example, right? Like I could not try to submit or pass. I could just try to attack your feet the whole time.
Yeah.
Now that carries with it risks as well.
Do you think that the Meows like showed up at the tournament and then like pulled the bear, like just did a bear and bow as a result of them like strategizing for the tournament, or was their game a development of like where they were training and like the fact that typical jiu-jitsu wouldn't work for them, and then as a result like this atypical meta kind of spread?
I err on the side of thinking that they probably could be good at any jiu-jitsu that they wanted to be good at, any style. Because they train full time, right? Like they train obsessively, and they're 100% dedicated to the sport, and so I have a sense that if they just took that same work ethic and decided to go to wrestling and just like, okay, we're just gonna drill double legs all day long, they'd be really good at double legs because that's all they drill. And they're smart guys, so they're not like just running into walls doing double legs. They're like thinking about all the different ways to set up a double leg and finish a double leg and counter the counters and all those things. Where did they get their inspiration to play their game? Probably from Hoffa and Gi, just like everybody else did. At some point, someone came along with the idea of reverse de la diva as an actual position, and all the attacks that you could do from it were developed over time.
Did the Meows come after?
Yeah.
The Mendes brothers?
Yes.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Right. But I'm kind of intrigued by the idea of, maybe in real time you don't really make these decisions the way that I'm describing them. But like when you're training,
when you're deciding what to train, I wonder if it's not profitable to say, like, what should I focus on that is going to be the most effective, right? That I should invest the most effort into.
You should find the person who beats you up the most, figure out what that thing
It
is.
doesn't always work that way, right?
think
Like,
so, like-
just because that person smashes you doesn't mean that their style is the best.
Yeah, but who cares about having the best style? Like you have a
Well, it depends
a
on
real,
what your intended
But
purpose is.
if you're worried about the people in your gym,
Yes.
then maybe like that's what you should worry about, and you shouldn't focus
Maybe,
on.
that's right, that's
returns.
different than if you want to go compete at an IBJJF tournament at a
Like,
high level.
if you run out of people in your gym who you like, who can smash you or who can beat you, then maybe yeah. But like
No, but there's a
until
lot
then-
of people who are in the gym, like I'll give you an example, like Gianni Grippo,
Yeah,
very good.
yeah,
He was not smashing everybody in Kansas
sure,
at all,
yeah,
right?
uh-huh.
He went on, he's very good, and he developed even after he left.
Yeah,
But, you know, he was a guy, he could, look, I think if you wanted to stay at Kansas and compete, and just compete against the room,
yeah,
that would be and a lot of people do it,
uh-huh.
right? And it's very profitable, you'll learn a lot, you'll get really good at jiu-jitsu,
Sure,
right? But some people say, I want to go compete against everybody else in some other gyms.
okay,
That's a decision that they make. So the decision that Gianni made in terms of his stylistic development was informed by competition, that his desire and intent to compete in, you know, IBJJF tournaments, essentially. That was his conscious decision.
uh-huh.
And so I'm trying to get to this idea of, you know, to bring it back to the whole rifle thing, right? Like things that you can work on in the gym that will work in your gym because you're like a hobbyist are maybe not always the most profitable things to work on. For that maybe a person who's like competitive
No,
in
but
jiu-jitsu
my point
has to work on to be competitive in competitive jiu-jitsu.
No, you should work on the problems that are at home and like that you're encountering on a day-to-day basis. Like if you're getting Ezekiel choked while you have people in your guard, you know, maybe that's something you should focus on.
Yes, that's
figuring out how to
true.
solve.
That's not
Like,
mutually exclusive, right?
well,
Like,
the thing is, like
that would be a problem no matter where
that
your training
particular
is.
thing, people don't choke other people in their guard with Ezekiel's in tournaments, right? Like that's something you will never see in a decent tournament with good people, right?
yeah.
But if you're getting Ezekiel choked while having people in your guard every day,
Yes.
then like that's
Yes.
that's
No,
something
that's-
that like you can
I have no quarrel
it's
with
a
that.
clear indicator
That you
of
suck.
something that you can not that you suck, but like
That you
it's something
suck.
to work on. And then
Yes.
and then someone else does another thing. to you.
No, but
It's
that's like-
that's
this
a
is-
clear indicator of a thing that you can work on, as opposed to like, you know, people are tapping you out left and right, and you're like, oh, what should I work on? Well, work on the things
Yes.
that you
No, no,
can.
but so what you're describing is kind of like
Regular-
minimal level jujitsu.
No, it's like
right?
regular
Like,
people,
like
regular
survival,
people,
like just don't get tapped.
Pre-black belt jujitsu,
Hmm?
like pre-black belt,
Well, I don't know if-
like professional tournament.
You see professional blue belts and purple belts who are amazing. I don't know if we can divide people by their belt levels anymore because I don't think that really holds true.
No, I think we can. That's what they're for.
I don't even know if that's what they're for, but like, you know, you look at these juvenile or teen competitors and they're green belts, right? Or they just got their blue belt
Yeah,
and they're just like wrecking
yeah,
everyone who's not a top level person, right? Like a top level black belt.
sure.
I don't think, you know, you can say like, oh, well, that person's just a green belt or that person's just a blue belt. Because some of these blue belts are just total killers,
Sure.
right? Like and again, they're different. They're like they have a different background. They have a different intention. They have a different goal. They have a different, you know, this is jiu-jitsu is like almost a career for them,
Yeah.
right?
And you don't think it's the same where like they go to competition class, they get beaten up by people who are competing and
I
have
have no idea.
competition.
I have no
And
doubt that
they
they do.
have a specific idea of like, oh, like I keep getting choked from this position. Like,
Yes.
how can I work on
Yeah,
this?
but that's like
That's like that's the best way.
if you go to,
in my
let me give
opinion,
you
to
another
train.
example. If I go to a gym, and you know, like every gym has its, I won't say
Flavor.
approved, but they kind of have their style,
I like flavor.
their flavor,
Yeah.
okay? Some schools are like, they really want to do like old school pressure pass, like,
Nothing but paper cutters.
that's what they want to do, and they're really good at it,
Sure.
right? And they may not, like, look, I mean, like Henzo's was like this. I mean, at least back when I was there and Johnny was there, I'll keep picking on Johnny, I don't mean to, but just use him as a useful example. Almost nobody was playing De La Riva in the gym, right? I mean, he was one of the few guys, especially on a competitive level, who was like, that was his thing. And I think it served him well in the long term, because that's kind of, when you get to his division and the people he was competing against, you kind of, that has to be something that you do or are very familiar with. And, but that wasn't something in the gym.
Really? That he didn't start studying De La Riva as a way to like deal with the way people were passing in the gym? Like he didn't use it specifically to counter the knee cut?
I mean, I can't read his mind. I mean, that is why you do it.
Like I feel like every technique that a person picks up is a result of it working, and like people, I think, like occupy.
Well, I can tell you it didn't work for a long, long time.
Well, I think people occupy niches in jiu-jitsu where, you know, maybe there's already like a really good guard passer in the room, right?
Yeah.
And as a result, you're not going to be a guard passer, right? That guy already has that move. Like you could be an okay guard passer, but you're not going to be.
Well,
the guard
no,
passer.
you can be awesome at
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
You
I'm
may not be
saying-
as good as that guy.
That's
Doesn't
what I'm
mean
saying.
you can't be.
That's what I'm saying.
You may not be
No,
the best in your room.
The thing is, when you roll with that guy, specifically, when you roll with that guy, you're not going to be passing guard, right? You're going to be developing anti-guard passing
Maybe.
skills. And so
Sure.
because if you already have a good guard passer in the room, what other people become are good guard passing defenders or good sweepers or good guard players, because that guy is already good at that thing, and the likelihood of you dethroning him to be able to practice that thing on the guy who is good at it is very low. So
Sure,
you're
but
gonna
here's
get
the
good-
thing.
You're going to get good at playing
But here's the
guard.
thing: if I really care about competing,
Uh-huh.
then this is all just a tool for me.
Yes, training.
It's just training,
Yes.
right? And I can work whatever I want with anybody, whether it's win or lose.
Uh-huh.
My goal isn't. I mean, some people like they fixate on the person in the room. Right, I see this a lot where people are like, I just want to beat that guy, or these guys, or I want to be part of that group of like people who have a certain level of skill. I want to give that person or that group a hard time, or whatever, get up to that level. That's fine. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I'm not making value judgments, right? Of like that's the right way or this is the wrong way. I'm saying people have different goals. If I have a goal, like, 'cause not everyone's going to be like, if I go to compete, right? Like, so I can take 2 examples, right? I can be here and I can just be like, Kevin's the best guy in the room. And I just want to give Kevin as hard a time as possible. I want to get to the point where I can tap out Kevin. That's my goal.
Sure.
That's all I think about.
Okay.
All right, not like obsessively, but like when I'm doing jiu-jitsu, my ultimate goal, if you said, what would make your day or your jiu-jitsu career? I'd be like tapping out Kevin legit,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Or there's nothing wrong setting your goal like that,
Yeah.
right? It might be annoying if you advertise it,
It's a little
but
weird, but
it's weird, right? But whatever, people do that all the time. People say, they fixate on one person, and they say, I want to beat that person. And it's just that motivational thing, right? Fine, whatever. But there are other people who say, I don't really care. Like, I mean, yeah, that would be nice, but I want to win a medal, or I want to go beat 8 people on a Saturday and a Sunday.
That's just beating different people. It's the same
Fine.
goal.
It's not the same goal.
It's the same goal.
It's not the same goal,
It's
because
still
here's the
fixating
difference.
on people and beating them.
Here's the thing. No. It's not. It's not, because you're a person that I will see every day.
Yeah.
Right? It's kind of like, I won't go into another metaphor or analogy, but like if I just see you every day and I just like study your game every day and I just think of ways to beat you all the time,
You're probably
now that might be a high mountain to climb, right? Depending on our relative levels and abilities, whatever. That is different than beating 8 more or less random people in random order, not always random order, not always random people, at a tournament on a given day.
Sure.
Right? These are 2 different things
Different
that you
things.
have to prepare for.
Yeah.
Right?
And then, so how do you?
So what I'm saying
How do you
is like,
prepare for
it's
the-
ultimately a question,
how do
like,
you
should you
prepare?
train differently for, like, look, if I'm just, this is my tournament.
No,
This is-
I think training to beat the people in your academy is training to beat people out of your
See, I
academy.
think that is wrong. I think that is not correct. It can be, but it's often not. Because again, I go back to the idea of an academy having a certain group of people that play a certain style. that may or may not be similar
Sure.
to, because here's another reason.
But like, how are you going to create some sort of fake style that other people create in your academy?
You don't.
You can practice.
You have to practice the
You
techniques.
can't practice other
You
people's
practice
jiu-jitsu.
the techniques
Your
that you
training
think are going
partners
to pay
have
the
their
most.
jiu-jitsu, and then you do your jiu-jitsu against your training partners, and that's how you train. You can't be like, yo, like, quick, be Marcelo Garcia.
Well, I mean, you could do that. You would need.
Not
you need,
really. Like,
you could.
you don't
You could-
know.
you could-
like,
you
you
would
could
be good.
maybe emulate some of his movements, but like,
Yeah.
you can't be Marcelo Garcia. You can't train to be
Well, you
him
could. Well, you
unless,
could.
unless
Well,
you train at his academy.
maybe you couldn't.
Like,
Maybe
he's
you're right.
right,
That you couldn't recreate Marcelo Garcia. I mean, he's one of a kind. I mean, he's an all-time great.
Yeah.
That's fair enough.
So use what you have. You have people.
You could do
use
that.
those people.
I'm not
Help
saying
them.
you should. I don't.
Let them
You
help
have
you.
to. You have to use those people. It's
Yeah.
your academy. You have to use them, right?
So
You
are
not
you
use them.
gonna-
You
are
have
you
to train with
Are you
them.
going to tell them to not
No.
train their own jiu-jitsu?
No. This is what you have to do, or what I think you might have to do, is that if you have that different goal, right? If your goal, like I said, if your goal is just to come in and train jiu-jitsu, you just come in and train jiu-jitsu, right? And what does that involve usually? We put time on the clock, and you roll around, and people go for submissions. That's usually what you do. Nobody's really keeping track of points. Nobody's really, I mean, really, the time is arbitrary. Sometimes you put 5, sometimes you put 10, sometimes you just roll forever.
Yeah.
You roll with a
we've never
rotation
sat
of people.
down. We've never sat people down and be like, okay, you got two penalties, one advantage, 2 points up, you're in the guard, you've got a grip and a half, go.
And then, you know what, I never think, and this is me too, right? I'm not trained with people thinking like, okay, this is some sort of tournament situation, and I'm gonna like try to pretend like I only have a minute left and I'm down by a point, right? Some people, but you could.
Yeah, you could.
You could, even without changing your training partners or asking them to be different, you could still structure things in a way that is more
But why would
similar, because you want to compete at a different
If you want
level.
to compete at a different level, you should go to an academy at which competing at the highest level is the priority. And then you're going to train the same way that I just described.
Maybe
You're gonna roll with the best of the best, and they're gonna do the best of the best jiu-jitsu, because that's the way that they do jiu-jitsu. And that's the way that they do jiu-jitsu is informed by the competition rules, right? And then you go and train with them, and the same thing happens, right? They do stuff, and then you get good at stuff because they're good at stuff, and then everyone gets better at the same time, right? Like trying to get someone else to do fake jujitsu.
That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is, that's not what I'm saying.
It's a useful way to get good at an idea or a move, but I feel like
Well,
if
here's
you're
another
good at
thing
jiu-jitsu
that
is your
occurs to
priority.
me. That occurs to me is that, you know, at Henzo's for a long time, you know, people just trained. Like, you had 6-minute rounds at the end of class, and you just did whatever, right? And you competed with whoever you wanted and did whatever you wanted for those 6 minutes. Those 6 rounds are 6 minutes. But, you know, we didn't have a real core of people, of competitors who trained for competition until there was Gary and Craig and Gordon and Nikki. You know, that was like a core of people who started to train for specific competitions and a specific competition style with very specific goals and very specific, you know, with an eye essentially to Abu Dhabi. You know, that's what they did. And they developed a system, or John developed a system where he saw that there was a gap, if you will, in how people were competing, right? What they were doing, right? That traditional way of like, I'm gonna pass the guard, which is not wrong, right? And I'm gonna get cross-side or whatever, force someone to turn their back or whatever it is. But he took that, he said, look, these are the rules. This is what I see as the deficiency in how people were competing, and how they approached competing. And he took those 5, 6, 8, I mean, there's a team now. And he essentially taught them and coached them how to compete in the way that he thought would be most advantageous. It was not you know, these guys didn't come from a totally random, like, let's just, you know, go ahead guys, go train. Go ahead, go do jiu-jitsu. Just go hard. Like, try your best.
Did it start that way?
Well, they may have started, like Gary was very successful before he ever started with John, training with John.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was in Abu Dhabi, he lost to Kron. I think that was, I mean, he was part of, it was Tom, I think it was one of Tom DeBlas's students.
Yeah, he didn't like Eddie, right?
But he was, you know, Eddie came from another school altogether.
Yeah.
I mean, he came, I think he came as a brown belt.
I thought they were all buddies though, right?
I don't know what their relationship was. I know Gordon came from Ocean City, and he was a Tom DeBlas / Gary guy. I think Ethan Krellinston came from TriStar. Oliver Taza came from TriStar. That's like a
So these guys already had like
these guys were
a
good.
background.
These guys were good. I mean, they weren't. I mean, Nicky is probably the only example of a guy who didn't have like real credentials.
Yeah.
And I mean, even Oliver Taza. Like, I never knew who Oliver Taza, Ethan Krellinston, or.
So does this conversation only apply to people who have reached that level of like they need to kind of, you know, step it up to get to that next stage of competition? You know, after you know jiu-jitsu.
I don't know, that's just a question that I have. I'm not saying it's a right or a wrong way. I'm asking the question of, you know, are people training, or should they train differently, depending on the goals that they have?
Yes.
Does it make sense for me, well, I mean, the opposite question is, does it make sense for me to train as if I were going to Abu Dhabi, if I have no intention of actually going to Abu Dhabi, right? And no chance of actually going.
Why?
Or little chance.
Maybe you training for Abu Dhabi is different than other people training for Abu Dhabi.
Yes.
So maybe
That is
this
true.
person doesn't think that they're training like they're training for Abu Dhabi, and you're just a fighter guy.
I'm definitely a part of it. That is not in dispute right now. On that, I will offer no argument. But I wonder if it's the same thing of like you invest in doing things or approaching things in a way that isn't likely to bear fruit for you. When you could be investing in other things that are going to be better for you.
I think if you
Or
have,
at least better for the goal that you profess for yourself.
I think if you have a good idea, you should pursue that good idea. If
How do you define a good
if
idea?
you get a better idea,
What's a good idea? What do
one
you mean?
that you feel is productive. Like,
For what? Productive
well,
for
we're
what?
talking about jiu-jitsu. Right?
Yes.
So
What is a productive idea
how
in
do you
jiu-jitsu?
tell that you're getting good at jiu-jitsu?
I don't know.
Okay, so first we got.
What is good in jiu-jitsu? What does that mean?
I don't know. However you want.
You're the one who's offering this example, so
Okay,
you should
so-
offer a definition of goodness.
Does the thing make you feel more familiar with the sport and the activity and the carrying out of jiu-jitsu?
I don't know what
Like
that
that
means.
should be the priority. Like a thing is worth your time if after doing it you feel like it was worth your time. You know, like if you
Making that a return on your investment.
yeah. So like that doesn't have to.
But
be,
that depends on your goals.
Like just because you could study like a person's game who's a world champion and it might not necessarily improve your jiu-jitsu.
Yes, that is true.
It probably will, but like, and there could be
Or
another.
it may not improve it in an intangible
there
way.
could be another person out there who is not famous, who is not extremely successful, whose jiu-jitsu could be the perfect thing
Yes.
for you right now.
100% agreed.
Right?
Yes.
So like,
But how do you make these decisions? Do you need to make them?
I don't think you should spend that much time thinking about it. I think you should train. Like, just
Mm.
go train. Go train. If you're watching YouTube and you get a good idea, do that idea. You know, don't think about it too much. Like, just train. You know, if you're having trouble with a thing and something's not working, like, fix that thing. Think about that thing. You know, don't think about like all the possibilities of what might happen into a tournament you might enter a couple of years from now. Like, you don't even know how to do a regular armbar. Just
Well, this is a different, like, I mean, if you're talking about, like, just people who are like, I want to do jiu-jitsu, I've never done it before, it looks cool.
well, if we're
Should I
talking
do
about
it?
like
Then yes.
pathway planning, like planning out technique, then we're not talking about people who know jiu-jitsu already. We're talking about people who are learning jiu-jitsu, and that's typically why.
Well, I mean, that raises another question of, like,
Just train.
what is the, I mean, just look, I
Don't
mean, I
think-
see.
if you're wasting your time thinking about efficiency, like just train. If you see something that interests you, if you see something that makes you laugh, if you see something that makes you think, look at it again. Just try it out.
Yeah,
maybe like look it up.
I don't think that's not the,
If you get beaten in a tournament, study what happened and then fix that thing. You know, like it just as things will come up as they come as you train naturally. Like you will get new ideas, you will make new connections between ideas that you thought were unrelated, right? And these things they're gonna happen, but they're only gonna happen when you train. They're not going to happen while you sit in front of a computer thinking about how to be the most efficient at your training, in my opinion.
I think that's, if you are new to jiu-jitsu,
Just show up.
then yes, I think that is true. But having said that, I think from a coaching perspective, you know, it's, I'm not sure that that's always the most efficient way to teach, of like, hey, just train. Just go ahead and go train. You know, like I think most people would say, whether you agree or not, say there are certain techniques that people, or positions or ideas that people need to learn first, or in the beginning, or at some point in the beginning, right? Or in the first year, right? If you were to go to a school and you ran into a blue belt, and that blue belt didn't know the first thing about guard, didn't know what a guard was, or maybe had heard of it but really had never played guard.
A blue belt?
Yeah, but you would say like that's a very odd thing, right? You would be taken aback by a blue belt who didn't know how to play guard very well.
I can believe a blue belt who can't play guard, but a blue belt that doesn't know what a guard is.
Well, I mean, maybe they know what it is, they've heard of it, but they haven't really done anything. Because we do this all the time. We do it, you know what we do? We don't like, not we, a lot of places, they don't do any takedowns.
Sure.
They just say like, takedowns are not something that
guard
we,
is jujitsu. Like,
according to you.
no, like
We don't do, we already agree, we're not doing jiu-jitsu, we're doing American scrapping. In American scrapping, the takedown is very important. So there's a value judgment, right? Like you make as a coach, as an athlete, as a student, you know, like you say, like, okay, I don't need to do takedowns.
If a 6-year-old is over here drilling Americanas, I'm not gonna yell at him because Americanas are stupid.
No, I'm not saying you have to. No, I didn't say you have to.
Not like actually yell, but like I'm not gonna course correct the kid.
No, I didn't say you. That's not an example of music. But let's go back to the takedowns, right? Like,
Sure.
What do you say often, right, about takedowns? What's the point when people can just sit down?
Yeah.
Right? Like, why would I bother wasting my time investing the energy to learning takedowns?
Why would I learn something that is probably going to get me injured in order to do something to a person who's probably not going to give me the opportunity to do it to them anyway? Because
So
they're going to
you're making an informed decision that you don't need to really work on a whole class of skills.
I just don't like takedowns.
Okay.
Like that's not. I'm not doing it because of a good reason.
Well,
like,
you just gave you a good reason.
I gave you a good reason.
There
That's not why I'm not doing it.
You just don't like it.
No, that's just the reason that you happen to
So
accept.
you've made a decision, a conscious decision,
not
not
a
to invest
value judgment.
in developing. I didn't make it. I'm just saying you made a conscious decision.
But not based on its value in terms of jiu-jitsu. I think takedowns are
Based on
great.
its subjective value to you.
No, it's based on.
Yeah, that's what you said.
Not value
You don't
to
like
me.
them.
I just don't want to do them.
Yes, because you don't like them.
No, I think throws are awesome. I wish I could do them. I just don't want to do them.
Because you've made a conscious decision not to invest.
Yeah, but it's not a
in-
comment on the value of the
I didn't
technique
make it
itself.
that. I'm not saying that.
You're saying value judgment.
I did not say that at all.
You didn't
You're
say-
saying
you
that.
didn't say value.
And you're defending it by backtracking on what you did
No,
say.
not-
But
you said
regardless
value.
of that,
You
the
said
point is
value.
I'm not attacking you, I'm saying, right, we all make our decisions, and it could be subjective or objective about what we do or don't do in jiu-jitsu. Some people would say, I don't want to do reverse de la Riva. Why don't you like to do that? Well, some people might say, well, my back hurts and I can't make it work. Or other people might say, I hate that crap and I'd rather come up or I just want to take them down, I'll come up on a single leg, whatever. Everyone they make a decision as to like, what am I going to spend my time investing to get better at in any given day, right? And that could be a totally subjective decision or it could be an objective decision, right? Like, I don't think that is a technique that I want to do is that useful because of X, Y, and Z, right? But we make these decisions, don't we?
I mean, my argument is that like you kind of just you're gonna make a decision not based on any actual information, just based on whatever you want to do.
Well, you make decisions that way.
And then no, everyone makes decisions.
No.
This way. They make a snap decision and then they justify it however they want. You know,
Maybe
no,
some
like,
people do.
No, like
You might do that.
no. Before you make any decision in like jiu-jitsu, for instance, you're not thinking about what you're gonna do. You're not like, oh, should I grab? Should I not grab? You just grab, right? You
After
do
a
it.
while, you
and
might just
then if
grab.
someone asks you afterwards, like, oh, like why'd you do that? You don't know. You just did it. Then you think about it. You think maybe like why was doing this thing advantageous for me, or like why does it make sense strategically, or why did it let me do this next thing? But you didn't think about all that before. You just did the thing. You did the thing. You made the decision, and then afterwards you come up with all this reasoning as to why you did the thing. Right?
That's not how Jiu-Jitsu works at all,
That
really.
that's how all.
No, because what happens is how Jiu-Jitsu is actually taught is that the instructors will show you a technique, and they'll show you where to put your grips and where to put your hooks and how to move your body.
You think?
And then
where do you think all that information comes from? You think it came out of a book somewhere?
It might have. Who knows?
And there's
If you were Kerry Collat, when you're wrestling, he'd come out of a book.
Is there a book that could be traced to the dawn of humanity that like this is just the way things are? This is good technique, or is this like a person who has their experiences telling you what they do? Because that's what they do. There's no justification behind it. That's just what they do. Or maybe that's what they're instructed.
Look, I mean,
sometimes it's what they're instructed in. They actually don't know why they do these things. It's just
sometimes.
the reason that they do it is because their instructor told them.
Sometimes, but sometimes people actually know what they're talking about and can tell you,
sure,
this is why you do this.
No, they do the thing, in my opinion. They do the thing. Like when I teach, I do a specific thing in a specific order. Why I do that is a mystery to me a lot of the time. Like it's
all the time?
Not all the time. But it's
sometimes.
It's like
sometimes you make up. You
sometimes
improvise.
Sometimes I have things that I've carried over from what other people have taught me that I know work for other people, but I don't really. It doesn't work for me because I don't really understand it.
Sure.
But I know that like it has been helpful for other people, and I like to not only teach things that I can do, but for the things that I do typically, I don't always have a good reason. Now we could probably stop and think about it, and I could give you a justification, or I can give you like a maybe what was going on through my mind, but usually I just forget. But it's just, I don't know, it's this intuitive thing that isn't always concretely based on anything logical.
Well, I don't think there's any dispute that occurs after, maybe not always after, but at a point where you've developed enough jiu-jitsu knowledge based on what other people have shown you that you feel comfortable
it's not
to
even based on
improvise
what
in
other
that
people
way.
have shown me. It's like my experience. It's
Well,
the
I'm not
13
disputing
years
yours,
that I've
you didn't
spent
start
rolling.
jiu-jitsu by just like rolling around and figuring out, and just like randomly gripping stuff and figuring shit out.
Yeah, I did. That's what rolling as a white belt is. And then like
Then what happens
while
is-
you do that, you come
What
across
happens
problems.
actually
and then you
is
go to your
that you go to
instructor.
class and you get taught techniques.
No. What
and
happens
then you
is
try to imitate them and you mess it up until you get it right.
You go to class for a year and you learn all the techniques, and
More than a year.
none of them ever work. Right?
At first.
No,
No, that's not true. Not ever.
Maybe
Not ever.
maybe when the new person off the street comes in, you can hit like a scissor
And
sweep.
you learn and you get better and you learn
But
what the responses are. You learn what
that's
the other
not a
people are trying
product
to do.
of you having like sat and paid attention in class. That's a product of you having sat and paid attention and then drilled that thing and developed your own actual understanding of what's
Yes,
going
of
on.
course.
And
Of course,
then
but
it
you
works.
wouldn't dispute that you were being taught.
No, you're being like guided. You're given ideas, but your actual ability to do the thing isn't
that's
based
true.
on this. This is helpful. This is really helpful. A lot of people couldn't do this without this, but this isn't like to be able to do a thing. You don't always need it to be spoken to you by a person. To necessarily
That's not disputed.
Right?
What I'm
And
saying
but
is that
that's
you're
helpful.
not, that jiu-jitsu, learning how to do jiu-jitsu is not just a process of randomly gripping stuff.
Yeah, and teaching,
until figuring
teaching
out
isn't
what
just a
works.
process of
It's not a
of
random
taking,
process.
Teaching isn't a process of taking things you've heard from other people and funneling it out to, in one ear and out the other.
Sometimes it can
that's-
be.
No, it shouldn't be. Like,
I mean,
no,
well, it
you should
depends.
only teach things that you at least have an idea.
That
of
is
how to
true.
learn.
That is true. And I don't dispute that you have to like take whatever techniques that you're learning or that are taught to you and adapt them to whatever your personal, physical capabilities are. Like that's not a dispute. I think you're going to the extreme other end of what I'm trying to say, right? It's not, jiu-jitsu is often not for everybody, maybe not for you. Maybe it's totally intuitive for you. You just make all this stuff up and you just walk onto the mat and you just I just close my eyes and feel the energy flow around me, right? And you have this mystical connection with the earth flow of jiu-jitsu or something. And God bless you if you do. But I don't think that that is the actual experience of 99% of the people, and why Kyle Terrell looks at any given person and says, you're doing that wrong.
Yeah, that's why
you know why? Because
99%
he
of people
knows
bad at jiu-jitsu.
that, hey, that is
Hey,
true.
if you're spending all of your time in jiu-jitsu thinking about what you're doing, you're not doing jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, nobody's saying that.
Okay,
Well,
so
nobody's
like,
making that
I
argument.
don't get why you're being so,
I'm not the
what's
one.
the word, not degrading, but you know.
What am I degrading?
You're being a little dismissive
Of what?
the idea of intuitive knowledge.
Not at all. Not at all. I believe, like I said,
You're
every
being a little
person
dismissive.
makes their own adjustment based on, and their own innovations, right? This is how jiu-jitsu changes over time, is that somebody comes along and says, that technique doesn't work for me, or if I adjust it this way, it does something different, or it's definitely, I totally agree that each person who comes to jiu-jitsu and does something, and studies it for long enough, right, and works at it long enough, will bring their own personal, intuitive sense to it. And in many instances, that won't just make it better for them. It'll make it better for like everybody who does jiu-jitsu. That's totally true. I'm not disputing that.
That is the point where you know jiu-jitsu. Like up until that point, until you can, until it's familiar to you, until you know it like the back of your hand, until you don't have to think about it.
But if I asked you to do a berimbolo,
Yeah.
right, or I showed you, if I asked somebody else to do a berimbolo,
Okay.
and you looked at it, you would say that's a berimbolo. If I said to somebody, do an arm lock, and they did an arm lock, you would look at it and you would say, that's an arm lock. There might be 1,000 different versions of it, but you would be like, that's an arm lock, right? And you might even be able to say, when somebody tries it or attempts it and it doesn't work, you often will be able to say,
That's a bad arm.
that's why it didn't work.
Oh, what?
Right? You might be able to, not always, you might say, that arm lock did not work and there's a technique that failed, and you would be able to diagnose and say, this is maybe, probably why it failed. This is what you're doing wrong, right? It's not because you didn't commune with the force enough in that moment, which maybe you didn't, but it's because you did something technically wrong. You didn't make the correct grip, you weren't in the right position, you didn't turn your hips a certain way. You know, you could go on and on about all the different, cross your legs.
Why couldn't the other person just do the right thing righter?
Well, I mean, you could certainly say the person beat you in whatever they were doing to counter or defend or escape or whatever it was. And you could say they just executed that technique better than you executed your technique. That's valid, right? Like you didn't do this well enough in the time that was allotted and with somebody who was better at doing what they were doing in the time allotted, right? Like it doesn't have to be the person messed up, right? You could be doing everything all correctly, more or less, but like your hands could be in the right position, but maybe your timing's off, right? Or maybe you didn't do something quick enough compared to what the other person was doing, right? That's true, right? You could do something correctly and the other person does it gooder. That's true.
Sure.
I wouldn't dispute that. You would still say the person messed it up.
I really struggle with the idea of being able to do a technique well enough.
Well enough to win.
It's like
I mean, here's the other thing, right?
Like a technique only it either works or it doesn't. If it doesn't work, it's not the technique. Like if I'm doing a scissor sweep to you, it's not a scissor sweep until you're swept. Like it's just me putting my knee in your stomach.
I mean, it's an attempted scissor sweep. It's an inchoate,
How do you
as
know?
we would call it.
Maybe I do as the person doing
Well,
it.
the
Like
person-
I know I'm trying my best.
Well, I mean,
Like,
I'll know if you're trying to scissor sweep.
Yeah, but like
right?
that doesn't mean I'm doing a scissor sweep. You know, like this is like idea of well enough doesn't really make
Something
sense.
at least similar enough to a scissor sweep that I might call it, you're trying to do a scissor sweep to.
Like, or I've had people in arm bars where I couldn't break their arm. Like, am I doing an arm bar? Like,
Well, you're not doing a successful arm bar. Are you attempting? In your mind, if you're
well,
like,
if
I'm attempting to do an arm
no,
bar.
I get the arm
Yes.
straight, and I run out of power. Like I can't.
Yes.
Whatever.
Or he's
it is.
just so strong.
Like I have enough mechanical advantage to like get the arm straight, but
Yes.
not enough to break the arm.
Okay.
Is that an arm bar?
I mean, it's an attempted arm bar. You're trying to do an arm bar.
Yeah, like an attempt.
It's not a complete arm bar.
Like an attempt at a sandwich with like bread and leaves in it. That's not really a sandwich.
I mean, it's not a good sandwich, but you can still eat it. It'll still nourish.
I probably shouldn't have used the bread. It's just like, you know, like it's
If I just draw a picture of a sandwich that I'm going to make later.
If I make a souffle and it's flat, like
Yes.
it's not a souffle. That's
It's a
bunch of
bad
fat.
souffle.
No, it's not a souffle.
I mean, if I burn a steak, it's still a steak.
No, it's charcoal.
Unless, well, it depends on how badly I burn it. Right? If I just overcook it and it's tough,
Oh,
it's still a steak.
Then that's a steak.
If I char it, then it's a charred steak.
Yeah. So at what point is
If
the
I put it in
armbar
a
not an
furnace
armbar?
until it's just ash, then it is just ash.
I feel like if you can eat it, it's a steak. If the arm can break, it's an armbar, right?
Well, I mean,
If you can't break
no,
an
I
arm,
think you're just playing semantic games.
yeah. Well, that's kind of.
I don't know where that gets us.
I don't know. I forget how we got here.
I think I was trying to make the point that one
the
could be,
idea that one could do something correct.
well, there's relative degrees of
No, it's
correctness.
like it either
Well, it goes
works
back to
or it doesn't.
accuracy. No, because look, we go back to the original example that I talked about a long time ago, which is if I'm hunting and I have to hit the deer at 200 yards,
Yeah.
right, and I shoot the deer, right, and I'm a few inches off, left or right.
Did you do it wrong because you didn't have? a
No, I
special
shot the
bullet?
deer, it died. I'm gonna eat
Yeah,
it later.
but you
Did
could
I
have,
did it
you
correctly?
could have done it righter, right, with a better grain of
There
bullet.
is- there
you could have
actually-
been more accurate. So is the way that you did it wrong,
there
or the way
is-
that?
Look, I mean, you could imagine a situation where I'm so off target that I actually hit the thing in the head.
Yeah.
Right? I wasn't aiming for the head. It falls.
Yeah.
I kill it. It falls
Miss.
over and dies.
That's a
It's a
miss.
clean kill. It's still
No, that's not a clean kill. That's
well,
a miss.
whatever. It's dead.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm gonna go eat it, and basically the same result. It's you didn't do it on purpose. You just it's kind of like you know, you do the arm lock, and in your futile your poor arm lock, but in your futile writhing around at some point, you know, you just mistakenly arrive into an omoplata.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you didn't do it on purpose, but the guy tapped, and you win.
Yeah. You didn't do it
That
on
is a
spot.
that was not a good, but you still killed the deer,
Yeah. Sure.
right? I got the submission, I won the match or whatever.
Yeah.
Hey, this is great, high five, boom. If I'm in an actual like Olympic target shooting match, accidentally going off 2 feet to the left, I'm going to lose. That is a bad shot.
They're both misses. I don't get.
Well, one
both
is
misses.
what's
Just because you get a dead deer
because-
doesn't mean you didn't miss the first shot. You missed the first
No,
shot.
no, listen to what I'm
You
saying.
killed him.
If my goal
Uh-huh.
is to shoot a deer so I can fucking eat it,
Okay.
then I have accomplished my goal.
Okay.
Not very well.
So
not
you're
because
not-
of any skill on my part, but
You're not trophy hunting.
because my goal is to eat that deer.
Okay.
I have accomplished my goal. Now I need to have work to do because the next time I shoot that poorly, I probably won't hit the deer.
Yeah.
Right? So I have the point here is that I have a greater margin of error,
Mm.
right, in that situation.
Yeah.
And the same thing is true at a tournament sometimes. If I'm going up against relatively crappy people,
Mhm.
right, or whatever, you know, that they're so bad that I could fail in my arm lock, and yet still submit them with some other random submission that they've fallen into, right? Like you've seen this, guys, they do a crappy arm lock and then the guy rides his way out of it, spazzes away, and then lands into a triangle,
Yeah.
right? And you're like, hey, high five, we won that one.
Yeah.
If you do that to a purple belt, if you're a white belt and you did that to another white belt,
Might work.
right, it might work. If you try to do that to a brown belt,
Probably won't work.
it's not going to work,
It might work.
right? You're in a different situation,
Yeah.
right? So these are different. It may be good enough for X, but not good enough for Y. You might be doing the exact or attempting to do the same exact thing, but a mess up in one it does not have the same consequences as an error in another. Sad. You see what I'm saying? That's what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah. I understand. I don't know. I just disagree. I don't like the way. I don't like the approach.
Of what? What is your objection?
It's too theoretical. Like it's not It's not just barely useful.
No. So here's the thing, right? Like, what I'm trying to get at is what I'm always trying to get at, which is if you know your purpose and your goal, and do your best to get to the goal.
My point is.
If your goal is just to be like good at jiu-jitsu for no other reason than to be good at jiu-jitsu, then you can just go and kind of be good at jiu-jitsu. And there's no time frames or limits, right? Like there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not passing a value judgment. What I'm saying is if you have a set goal, whatever that goal is, like is there a better or worse way to go about reaching that goal?
Yeah. My point is, I think Jiu-Jitsu should be pursued, like Jiu-Jitsu it's a long-term kind of pursuit. Like it took me 10 years to get a black belt.
Sure.
They're going to be
You're
different.
It's
They're
okay.
going
It
to
took
be
me
different.
like 15 years, 20 years.
Different stages of your development. You know, you're going to need different things, and I don't know. I feel like efficiency is the worst reason to train for anything. Like
Depends on what you're
it depends
training
on
for.
why, but like there's so many. There are so few people who I would guess are watching this and also preparing to compete competitively, like as a profession. That hey, like my advice is more towards the people who are interested in getting good at jiu-jitsu.
Getting gooder.
Getting good at jiu-jitsu for themselves.
Well,
Like,
I mean,
to become better at jiu-jitsu than you were yesterday.
Yes.
And if eventually through this process you reach the point where like, oh shit, like I've run out of people to compete with at my gym, then maybe like you should stop and reassess if you're being efficient or if you're still on track with whatever your goals are. But for most people, show up and train. Like get ideas from the people who you train with, and let the people who have experience that you have access to, who are willing to talk to you, willing to help, like let those people guide you, as opposed to like you just trying to guide yourself as far as like what the best techniques are.
I thought you were just supposed to be intuitively making stuff up and communion with the jiu-jitsu spirits.
I think it's
Not learning from other
the
people
learning
who can't teach
process.
you anyway.
The learning process it's informed by people who know what they're doing. It's not completely intuitive. It's like the knowledge of like technique should be the backbone of what you do, and it should like the things that you do while you're rolling should be based on something. Ideally, like it should be based on experience or ideas or like, you know. And when I do things that like maybe I come across a situation where I like can't intuitively think of something, I always do go back to like logic and like what could I do here? Like if I do this, but like that's not the ideal. I think like it's you can get away with it. You can do a lot of good jiu-jitsu by thinking your way through it, but I would personally like to get people past that point. That's my goal as an instructor is to have people who can both think about things and like feel about them and use those at the same time to be able to do their jiu-jitsu.
Search your feelings, Luke.
A little bit, like not completely blindfolded, but not completely rigid and focused on like.
I don't think that they have to be, you know, to me, the you know, doing jiu-jitsu for fun and enjoyment and what have you is the more sustainable and recommended course of affairs, as opposed to trying to pretend like you're, you know, training like a, you know, need to train like a world champion, right? And go crazy with all the drilling and the you know, all the things that in people's minds they believe that you have to do, right? All the suffering, if you will, the things that are not fun at all in jiu-jitsu. But you know, it's you know, there's got to be a happy medium between those two things. But I often see people who are kind of like working at cross purposes as a coach, you know, and they say they want to do one thing, but then they do something else that's not in any way, like it's working directly in contradiction to whatever their stated goals or abilities.
Some people got multiple goals beyond what they've stated.
Oh, that's another good point, right? They could have multiple goals. That's fine, right?
Yeah.
But it's just always interesting to me, you know, as a coach, right? Like what things should be taught to whom, when, how often, you know, like how much direction do you give somebody, how much freedom or latitude do you give them to kind of explore on their own. You know, often I see people who, you know, they insist on that level of latitude and then they express some frustration when they don't get very far, right? Or vice versa, people who, you know, are all in and then they get frustrated because it's like, it's too intense, they grind themselves down, they overtrain.
Well, that's the thing. I don't know anybody who started jiu-jitsu, and I'm sure that they probably exist, but who started jiu-jitsu like thinking that they're going to compete. Like most people start like they get into it because it takes a long time to get into. It takes a long time. No one, I haven't met anyone who jumps in and I don't know, I've met a couple people probably, but
I see a lot of people who they really like to compete right off the bat. I mean, like kids, for example, they just like a lot of, some of them are like all about competition. And those kids generally just keep competing, right? Until they don't.
It usually takes, I think for most people, it takes about a year. I feel like to get to the point where they feel like they know what's going on in jiu-jitsu. It takes a long time to get an overall familiarity with what's happening. And like that period from starting jiu-jitsu to like getting to that point where maybe you feel like competing. I think that's a time of fun and not worrying about efficiency and just like enjoying the process and just being a part of the, maybe not the grind, but kind of the grind. And getting used to the smashings and the sweatings and the drillings and the aches and the pains and
All good things.
yeah.
All good things.
But like, and also as a coach, if someone comes in and they're new, I'm probably not going to jump on I'm going to get them on the most efficient jiu-jitsu training schedule possible because the likelihood that they're going to be here in 6
No,
months.
but I'm not, you know, there's different things, right? Like you can put your coach hat on, you can say like, okay, there's the newbie who comes in,
Yeah.
right? And you're gonna show them or have them do something, right? When some people have a lighter or a heavier touch about what, and that person may come in. We've had people come in and say like, I want to go to the next tournament after 3 months,
Yeah.
right? I mean, there are people that are definitely, they want to compete, right? And they just have that urge. Most people do not.
Yeah.
Right? And so, I mean, and then you have the people who, yeah, they're a year in, they're 2 years in, they're whatever, you know, they're 10 years in. You know, they all have different, then the goals may change.
Yeah.
You know?
Sometimes like wrestlers who transition into jiu-jitsu, they're very pro-tournament, I find. A lot of them, I feel, are trying to like get back into that.
I think some
spirit.
people, there is no point in doing something unless you are going to compete with it. Like, if that is the point of doing the thing, is so that you can compete. Or at least that's a validation that you're seeking, right? Like, this is how I know I'm getting better. Or,
Sure.
you know, so.
Then in that case, you should probably train
I
as
think that-
efficiently as possible.
I think that people should go and compete regardless of whether they want to be competitors or not. I think there is merit
And I agree, but like,
to go and compete.
I wouldn't want to change the way I train to compete because I'm not a competitor. And
Right, no, that's a personal, like, you are so far, look, we all, I think, at some point, we decide, right, how we want to, what path we want to go down in jiu-jitsu. At some point, and sometimes we change our minds and try to change minds, it's too late, or maybe it's too early, right, the timing's not on, but, I think everyone at some point is like, okay, I'm not going to be a competitor. That doesn't mean you stop doing jiu-jitsu or that your jiu-jitsu no longer is meaningful or anything like that. It just means like, okay, I'm doing other things, right? I have other ways of getting validation, or maybe I don't need any validation, or right? I mean, I have other goals. There's nothing wrong with that. I think it's helpful to kind of at least, and it's fine to be like, you know what, I'm not going to compete, but I love training with the people who do compete. I love training that way.
Yeah.
I find some benefit to it. I mean, I think there is a benefit to setting some sort of goal and trying to reach it. At least for me, right? Now, maybe other people like to just go and do whatever and float through, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong. It's not a. I'm saying from my perspective.
Is it your goal to do everything as efficiently as possible?
No, my goal is just to like try to stay on the mat and keep training for as long as I can.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm not the most efficient. I'm like anti-efficient. But if I have a goal, I get very efficient. That's the conundrum, right? If I don't really have a goal, like an actual tangible, concrete goal, I'm very inefficient in everything. But once I set that goal for myself, I get very focused. I'm very good at like what I call monotasking.
Why is that?
We're all different, right? Like I'm obsessed with these questions because that's what how I am. Right? I mean, I wouldn't say that it's a better or worse way for everyone. That's not what I'm trying to say. I mean, different people have different sensibilities, goals. Men, like that's why we're different people, right? You have different ideas ideas and ways of looking at the world in yourself, right? Like but I notice for myself that I get better at whatever it is when I have like some sort of concrete goal that I work towards. And so, I don't like to think, given I have a limited amount of time on the earth, or on the mat, that, maybe the idea is I should just like, and the funny thing is that before, right, like when we could all train every day as much as we wanted, I didn't think about this as much, probably not as much as I do now, because I was just training, like you're saying, right? And that was fine. I like to train, I like to teach, right? And I would think often about like, what's the best way to teach, and how do I get people to be better and happier at jiu-jitsu, and things like that, but I wasn't like sitting here for 2 hours and talking about it, or thinking about it, right? But now we don't have as much time on the mat, or at least I don't, so like, my mind wanders.
Yeah.
Right? But yeah, I'm like, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't look at myself and be like, oh, Rich Jackson, the most efficient person in the world. I'd be like, yeah, I'm pretty much an inefficient piece of shit right now.
I think I put efficiency on the back burner for consistency.
Consistency is, yes, that's the other thing, is consistency is super important.
I feel like sometimes I get, because every once in a while I go through, I start feeling good, and I go through a week where like I'm gonna like get everything together and what's the word? Streamline my schedule. And get everything like perfect, and it's like everything as efficient as possible and get everything done. And then I feel trapped. It's like that's like, because once you're at maximum efficiency, and if efficiency is your goal, like that's what you have to do. Like you're just stuck doing that thing. Like that's what you do now. Like,
well, it depends on how you do it.
Well,
right?
it's like if you
it's not.
Well, for me, it's like when I'm scheduling my day, it's like for perfection. There's only one possible.
Yeah, you can't do
day.
perfection. Perfection is not. That's not what I'm saying.
Well, that's what efficiency is, right?
No,
efficiency is
no.
the striving for perfection in something, right?
No,
like it's whatever it is. It's like there's this idea of
it can be
the
that.
best possible.
No,
and you think about it, you think about it, you think about it, you think about it.
I think you're caricaturing it the way that I caricature like the free floating intuitive stuff, right? I mean, we're actually kind of talking past each other because neither of us really mean those things. But I don't agree that you can. There's another saying that I like to say, which I mean I'm not the one who made it up, but like perfection is the enemy of the good, or the good enough, right?
The Chaco.
No, I mean it's a very old saying, right? But never let the perfect be the enemy of the good, or the perfect is the perfect enemy of the good. Some version of that. I don't believe that either, and I think you do the best you can do. Like I can't make a set schedule for myself like that's strict because I have 3 kids and a wife, and stuff to do, right? So I can't. My schedule's often not my own, and things happen. And it's fluid. You got to roll with it.
Yeah.
So you just got to do what you got to do.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I have to go soon. But
I think that's the mix I'm thinking of. Like you look for like a moderate amount of efficiency, but not so much that you're obsessing with it, and you're just like you do allow a little bit of flow.
I think of it as when I talk about efficiency, I think of like I don't want to like totally waste my time. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Right, like I want to kind of drift in the right direction.
But I don't want it to be.
I'm not like marching like a soldier to the. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying like perfection, like. We're going to drill this 10 times and then you're going to do 10 and then we're going to do.
I just want a little rose smelling.
13 seconds.
Stop and smell the roses kind of thing.
Yes.
Not too much, not too little though.
All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed our little debate, our daily debate. Our code word for today is perfection. I'll see you guys tomorrow. I don't know if anyone's still.
Tomorrow can our code word be master debaters?
Ha ha ha. This is a family show, Kevin.
I thought it was adults.
Is it an adult show?